Wairimu Faith, karibu Mtembee TV.
Asante sana, ninashukuru kuwa hapa siku hii ya leo.
Yes. So tukiangalia huku tunaona another presidential candidate ametangaza ujio wake kwa ulingo wa siasa ya Kenya. So Wakenya kwanza wangetaka sana kujua Wairimu Faith ni nani?
Asante sana. Wairimu Faith is an educator and a leader. I have been in education for many years. Nilisomea ualimu katika chuo kikuu cha Nairobi. Alafu wakati ambapo nilimaliza nikafunza kidogo hapa mjini Nairobi. Alafu kisha nikaingia Safaricom. Wakati huo ndio Safaricom ilikuwa inaajiri watu wengi. Kutoka Safaricom nikaingia management pale NIC Bank ambayo sasa hivi inaitwa NCBA Bank. Kisha nikaona nina miss watoto sana na ninataka kuwa katika ile environment ya kusomesha. Nikarudi katika sekta ya elimu, nikaenda Marekani, nikasomesha Marekani. Kisha nikarudi Kenya, na wakati ambapo nilirudi Kenya, nikafanya kazi katika ubalozi wa Marekani kutoka mwaka wa 2012 hadi 2020. Na wakati ule nimekuwa na wakati mzuri sana wa kuzunguka Kenya nzima pale universities na high schools tukiongelea mambo ya elimu, na pia nikisaidia wanafunzi ambao hawangeweza kuenda chuo kikuu hapa nchini kwa sababu ya kukosa fedha kwenda kusoma Marekani, na wengi wao wamepata kazi nzuri, wako pale Europe na US ambapo wanafanya kazi kwa kampuni kama Facebook, Microsoft, HP na makampuni mengine. And then after that nikapata kazi nyingine wakati ambapo nilitoka ubalozi, na sasa nikaingia kwenye serikali ya US government, Bureau of Education and Cultural Affairs, nikakuwa regional director ambapo nilikuwa nimesimamia balozi 19 katika region ya East and Central Africa. Kwa hivyo mimi ni educationist. Other than that, also interested in orphans. So there's an orphanage that I've been supporting for the last 10 years. And I'm also interested in widows. I've been working with widows from 2016. In 2018, I started small businesses for the widows. And so there are many things that I do. I'm also an apostle. We have a church here in Nairobi and in other places. Basically, that is Wairimu Faith. And also right now, a presidential aspirant in the upcoming August 9 general election. Thank you.
Wow. Sasa Wakenya watashangaa with all these qualifications.
Ndio.
Utakujiaje hii kiti yetu ya stress hapa Kenya kuwa president? Okay, what made you think of becoming then Kenya's next CEO?
Thank you very much. And I think that is a very legitimate question for you to ask. I come from the beautiful county of Nakuru, and I've seen what elections mean. So in 1988, I was quite young. And what happened is that we were told we have to leave school pretty early because something had happened. And by the time we were in the streets of Nakuru, there was just chaos everywhere, but we went home early. And when I got home, I asked my parents what had happened that had necessitated us to go home early. I was told there was elections and there was a bit of commotion and people needed to be at home. That was 1988. 5 years later, it will be 1992. In 1992, again, we are in school. And when we are in school, there's commotion outside. And when we look at what is happening, we see people with blood and arrows in their body. Again, we have to run away from school and go home. And then I asked my parents, but ni nini kinafanyika? Wakaniambia tena ni uchaguzi. Sasa nikiwa mtoto mdogo nikaanza kufikiria, uchaguzi inamaanisha bloodshed, no school. Because now that is what I had seen twice. By the time it was 1997, my theory began to take root. Because what had happened is that in 1997, the same thing happened. We had to close school and go home because of election violence. So that thing became a reality in my mind that any 5 years, in a cycle of 5 years, we had election, there had to be violence. Then 2007, 2008, now I'm an adult. I'm working at Safaricom and we have election violence. And I began to ask myself a question. And because I like to write, I started writing articles. And my question to myself was, is it possible that we can have a presidential aspirant who is a leader, who is a statesman or a stateswoman, who is not going to cause emotions to flare during election time, and people don't have to fight about these people. So I started thinking about it, and I knew that what I needed to do first of all is to get experience, to learn how other governments work, and it was my desire to work with the government. And as I would have it, I got an opportunity to work for the US government for all those years that I did, and I learned. And here we are again, 2022. You can already see how divisive we've become. And I am a voice, and I am telling people it's not a two-horse race. I am here. I am a presidential aspirant, and we don't have to kill each other. We do not have to fight, and we do not have to destroy people's property because of elections. Thank you.
Wow, wow. So, siasa ya Kenya, politics ya Kenya is so tribal.
Yes.
At the end of the day inakujanga inakuwa wewe kama Wairimu unaleta Wakikuyu, Raila analeta Wajaluo, Ruto analeta Kalenjin, Kalonzo analeta Wakamba. Utawezaje kumanuva in these elections such that watu hawatakuwa na, kama wewe ni Mkikuyu unahitaji kuwa na Wakikuyu, na is there a way that ungejoin maybe the two signs zenye unasema ni two horse race kama Azimio ama Kenya Kwanza, and then maybe utafute cheo kama deputy president or something?
Okay. So let us talk about tribe, because I think that is a question that we must address. Tumefika mahali sisi kama Wakenya tunaumia kwa sababu ya high cost of living. Nikienda kununua mafuta ya kupika, 1 liter itakuwa ni 500 shillings. Nikiwa Mkikuyu, nikiwa Masai, nikiwa Mnandi, nikiwa Mkamba, the cost of cooking oil is the same. Jambo la pili, unajua maisha magumu hayachagui kabila. Kila mtu anapitia ile shida. Jambo la pili ni employment. Watu wengi ambao tumekuwa na wao na wakapoteza kazi during COVID, kwa sababu during COVID we lost 740,000 people lost their jobs. Now I want us to think about if 740,000 have lost their jobs, sio hao watu tu ambao wamepoteza kazi, lakini kuna watu wengi sana ambao walikuwa wanategemea ambao sasa hawana hiyo usaidizi. Wakati wa kupoteza kazi ikifika, COVID haikuuliza mtu wewe ni Mkikuyu ama wewe ni Msabaot. Watu wote walipoteza kazi regardless of their tribe. And now we are in a place in Kenya where life has become so challenging. The cost of living has become so high. It only takes one disease in Kenya for somebody to become not just poor, but to live in abject poverty. And so we begin to ask ourselves, if tribe is the one that causes us to choose our leaders, and 58 years after independence, we are still going through the issues that we were dealing with during independence, has time come for us to remove that blindfold called tribe and just choose leaders that are going to help us to overcome the challenges? Because I can assure you something, that countries like Dubai was born 7 years after us, it's 51 years old. But today, and I can tell you for a fact, we are, as Kenyans, looking at Dubai at a place where you can go and work and earn a daily wage. But this is a country that is 7 years younger than us. Why is Dubai different? It's because they have had a different leadership. Singapore came to Kenya, they studied our plan and our strategy, and they went and implemented that plan as it was. 3-4 years ago, I was in Singapore in 2019, and one of the cabinet ministers told us that there is a time they collected so much revenue as a nation that they paid Singaporeans money. Government paid people money. These people used our plan. Is it possible that we're going to reach a place and say, it doesn't matter which tribe I am from, but time has come for me to ask myself, is this life going to be like this? And I wanted to think about the cycles of elections that I've gone through. As every 5 years pass, we can only become older. Are we becoming older and better, or older and broke and bitter? Now, the other question that you asked me is about joining a coalition. If you look at the two coalitions that we have, the Honorable Deputy President William Ruto, the former Prime Minister Honorable Raila Odinga, they have been in politics all these years, and they have always promised us. And I believe that they have done their best over all the time that they have been in leadership. And I believe that their best still needs to be improved. And so I cannot join their coalition. I am going to stand as an individual and tell Kenyans, I am here, I'm offering my expertise and my solutions for us to create a better nation, because there is nothing new that we are going to see from these coalitions, because these people have been in politics all these years, and all they're doing right now, even as part of government and being influential in government, is still selling us hope. My question to us tonight is, for how many more years will we live on hope? Sorry, you're muted.
Sorry. So your agenda, Kenyans wangetaka kujua sasa, is it Ms. ama Madam Ms. Wairimu Faith amekuwa president, anafanyia nini wa Kenya?
Asante sana. Na unauliza swali nzuri sana. I have many areas that I want to talk about, but allow me to choose the top 3 that touches on everyone. And the first one is education. We've just received our education results, and 82% of our students did not qualify for universities. And I'm not saying that everyone should go to university, because we are totally gifted differently. And going to the university doesn't mean I'm successful, as opposed to somebody who doesn't go to university. Bill Gates didn't go to anyone's university. He's a millionaire. But what I'm asking is it possible that we have an education system? And for me, being an educator and having studied education systems from other countries, I can tell you that there is no nation that can be successful if their education system does not set up people to be successful. And I want us to think about success in 2 ways. I'm not thinking about success such that I am successful and I can work in another country, which is a possibility, but am I becoming successful as a Kenyan to make Kenya as a nation globally competitive? Because that's what we need to move to. Because what we have done is that the little education that we have had has given us opportunities to work in other nations, but as a country, we are not globally competitive. We have citizens that are globally competitive, but a nation that is not globally competitive. It is time for us to have an education that makes its citizens globally competitive and that also makes the nation globally competitive. Number 2, I want us to think about our education system. Having taught in the US, I had classes that had 9 students, and that's a whole class. My biggest class had 15 students. Now, my class will last 1 hour, and I'm only working with 9 students. What that meant is that nilikuwa na wakati mzuri sana wa kuongea na kila mwanafunzi. Na mwanafunzi akiwa na swali ananiuliza. Na kama kuna kitu ambacho nimesomesha na hakuelewa, ninaweza kuwa na one-on-one na huyo mwanafunzi na nikamuelezea na akaelewa. Now watch this. Katika nchi yetu kuna shule ziko na wanafunzi 100 kwa darasa moja na wako na 40 minutes. My brother, even if I am a teacher who is a miracle worker, it is not possible for me to teach and respond to questions. Kwa sababu, kama nitawakubalisha waulize maswali, 40 students, the 40 minutes is over, another 60 still haven't asked questions. Na swali ni, tunaenda shule kusoma ama tunaenda shule kupitia shule? And that is our experience, that we have many people who are going to school, but they are not benefiting from the education process. And if as a government, we are going to invest a lot of money in the education system, we cannot invest money and waste and just burn it, just to show people that our children are going to school. It has to be an education that makes sense to somebody, even after they leave school. Mtu anaweza kuambia, bado ninakulia masomo yangu na masomo yangu yalinisaidia. Number 3, tuko na walimu ambao wamekuwa wakiambia serikali tuongezee mshahara. Anytime the teachers are asking for a pay increase, and if you look at the teachers' salaries, it's not a lot of money. So when they're asking for a salary increment, they're not asking for a lot of money. And I want you to know that the teacher is a person who is employed by TSC, and apparently they're supposed to be on duty for 24 hours. So huyo mwalimu akiitisha aseme niongezee mshahara, sio tamaa wako nayo. Because if we look at our politicians, our MPs, if our MPs need salary increments, they don't have to go to the streets. Wanajiongezea mshahara, mbona tusiongezee ule mwalimu mshahara, tumlipe vizuri ili akikaa kwa shule ana concentrate na masomo. We need to think about those things, and we need to think about our education system. Now, I have a very good question that I want to ask us. If the students that I helped to go and study in the US, today work for big companies like Google, Microsoft, Facebook, and they left students that they were with in this country, and those students are still looking for jobs, doesn't that point to us and tell us that there is a problem with our education system, that there is a problem of opportunities? And we need to sit down very clearly and on August 9 ask ourselves, pengine mimi nimesoma nimemaliza, lakini kuna watoto ambao wako nyuma yangu, what kind of life do I want for them? As I launched my presidential bid, I said, politicians are concerned about the next election, but leaders are concerned about the next generation. We need to begin to think about the next generation and ask ourselves, how are we going to put them at a place of advantage? Now, the other thing that I'm interested in is economy. Because once we leave the school system, where are we going to go to? We need jobs. The SME is the greatest employer of Kenyans in our country. And our economy has been sabotaged by corruption. Na hii corruption imekuwa ni kitu ambayo serikali zote ambazo tumekuwa nazo imelemewa. That means politicians cannot fix corruption. Because they come and tell us every year, politicians will come and tell us, and I believe that Kenyans, we have a good memory. We can remember how this kind of corruption has been, sold to us. When I come in, I'll fight corruption, but no one really has fought corruption. But a time has come for us to say, we cannot have an economy that grows if we have corruption that continues to sabotage. Corruption, tumepatia jina nzuri, ni jina nzuri la kizungu, corruption, ufisadi kwa Kiswahili. Lakini ufisadi inatoa pesa mahali ambapo hiyo pesa inafaa kuwa, inapeleka mahali ambapo haisaidii mtu, kwa sababu ufisadi inatoa pesa kwa umma, inapeleka pesa kwa mfuko ya watu. Let me give us a few examples. A few decades ago, university students did not pay school fees. They did not pay for food, and they were paid to be at the university by the government of Kenya, and we had a lower GDP than we have today. Question is, where did that money go to? Because right now, as it is, as we are talking in this program, our universities are cash-strapped, and the Bretton Woods institutions, in specific, the World Bank, has asked us to merge our universities because they're running deficits and the government doesn't have any more money to give them. So the question is, if students are working so hard to go to the university and the universities do not have money, the cost of attending university, for instance, University of Nairobi is 100,000, it means that that education system is not going to be available for many. Now, if your parents are going to pay so much for you to go to University of Nairobi, 4 years, 400,000, they are expecting that at least by the time you leave school, you should be economically viable. You should be able to work and at least help yourself. Hata kama hautawasaidia wewe ujisaidie. What are we seeing? We're seeing our university students leaving school, again, because of corruption, and because the corruption has also made our country not attractive to foreign investors. They leave school, wamemaliza pesa ya wazazi, na wao wenyewe hawana pesa. So for me to make sure that our economy is vibrant, number one, I have to fight corruption. Now, the wonderful thing about me is that I have no loyalties to any person. So if anyone is caught up with corruption, I will make sure that the judiciary is independent. The judiciary in this country cannot continue to be a puppet of the executive. They need to be independent for them to prosecute. Number two, on the economy, what I'm going to do is to make sure that we reduce corporate taxes. We are at 30%, reduce it even if it's 25%, and create policies that are going to help and that are going to guide our corporates to reinvest this money. Once they reinvest the money, they're able to employ more Kenyans. Number three, when it comes to our manufacturing industry, our manufacturers are closing down every day. Why? Because of the cost of energy. My administration is going to remove VAT from energy, specifically electricity. Number two, I'm going to remove the fuel levy charge. Think about it. If you buy electricity for 1,000, over 50% of that 1,000, more than 510 shillings is going to go to taxes and charges. Kwa hivyo inamaanisha kama umenunua stima ya 1,000, unanunua stima ya kitu kama 480. Hizo pesa zingine zote ni taxes. Now, I want you to think about those costs when it comes to manufacturing. It is not viable. And that is why our manufacturing plants are closing. Once they close, people go home. So remove those levies, make sure that our energy is possible, and also encourage green energy. Again, on our economy, again, I'm a teacher. I am going to make sure that teachers pay a reduced tax. Teachers are not going to pay 30% like everyone else. Teachers are going to pay lower taxes, let them take more money at home, and let them have more time to focus on our students. Now, when you look at our tax model uses an old model for Adam Smith. It is time for us to ask ourselves, can we create innovation? Can we be an innovative country? Because I want you to think about this. A university like MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, if it was a country, if that university and its alumni was a country, it would be the 11th richest country in the world. Not even a third world country. A university and its alumni would become the 11th richest country in the world. Why? Because of innovation. I can tell us that Kenya has a lot of innovation, but the challenge that they have is money to start. Other people from other countries want to come and invest in us, but when they come to us, the first thing we're going to ask them, what is my kickback? Mtu anakuletea pesa ili wewe ufaidike, lakini kwa sababu ya culture ya ufisadi unaanza kumuitisha pesa. What does that investor do? They just stand back and go to another country. My number 3 priority area is going to be agriculture. Now, when I talk about agriculture, I'm not talking about crop production only. I'm also talking about animal husbandry. We haven't for a long time helped our agricultural system. And we know that agriculture is the backbone of our economy. And if we are going to grow the economy, we also need to think about our agriculture. It's time for us to go back to agricultural extension officers and make sure that our farmers have the support that they need. We have a huge gap of information in the agricultural system. But once we have agricultural extension officers, they will tell us in the next 3 years, we expect that our farmers are going to use X tons of fertilizer and make sure that we have that fertilizer. This year, fertilizer was not available at the right time. Number 2, it was very expensive. So it was out of reach for many people. And the few people that had fertilizer, you've already seen what has happened. The armyworms has just hit people's farms and eaten all the crops. So they will not harvest anything. If we had agricultural extensions officer, these farmers would have had people who immediately would have jumped in and helped them. Number 2, think about the crisis we've had in Marsabit. Over 20 years, this crisis has been there. It is a very complex problem in Marsabit, but one of the issues in Marsabit is natural resources. Why can't we have veterinary officers who deal with nomadic communities who deal with animals? Is it possible tunaweza kufungua kichinjio Mandera, tufungue ingine Narok, ingine Kajiado? Instead of telling these communities, when your animals are about to die, bring them to Athi River. They die on the way, so they lose, everybody loses. Is it possible that we can open places of slaughtering those animals where they are? They don't have to walk for many kilometers and lose their cattle. The third thing, we need to think about our environment. We used to have officers who used to deal with forestry. Bring them back. Once we are able to deal with those 3 issues, then we can begin now to think about, now that we have agricultural products, how do the youth come in? The youth now can open up organizations. They can open organizations to help farmers to market their products to other countries. Number 2, the youth can work in plants that add value services. If we could even add 15%, just 15% to our loose tea, do you know that we could make 85% more from what we get in the international market? So our tea farmers will make more money. So those are my 3 priority areas.
Wow. Okay. Kuna mambo mingi sana. So watu wanauliza, since you launched your presidential bid,
Yes.
umefanya campaigns ama you are just working on online kama sisi?
Now, well, that's a very good question. According to IEBC, you can only start actively campaigning on May 29. That is an IEBC law and regulation. So if I start campaigning right now, going to the ground, what that is going to be breaching IEBC laws. And I cannot afford to be somebody who is going to tell you that I'm going to uphold the Constitution of Kenya and at the same time break it. So what am I doing? Right now I've been doing media interviews. I have had many volunteers who are meeting and sensitizing others about my candidature. So what's happened? That's what is happening right now.
So you have not yet started since IEBC hawajatangaza?
Hawajatangaza na IEBC wametuambia until May 29, you cannot campaign. That will be in breach of IEBC rules. And if you breach them, you are culpable to be sued.
Na sasa hao wengine Kenya Kwanza and Azimio team, they are all out kwa campaigns. What happens?
If a Kenyan wants to sue them, they can sue them. Anyone who wants to sue them for breaking the law, they can do that.
Okay.
Yes.
Otia anauliza, how will you manage or rather structure your cabinets to deliver your agendas?
Thank you very much. One of the things that I have said before is that if you are a hardworking Kenyan, then guess what? My administration will be your administration, because we are going to work with people based on merit. What I have seen with the US government, they don't give you a job because you're an American. They give you a job because you're competent and because you're the best person that is placed for it. And it is time for us to begin to ask Kenyans, these are the opportunities available. Are you the best person for the job? And if you're the best person for the job, apply for it. Let us look at it. Let us stop the idea of chronism that I'm going to give you a job because you're my friend, whether you can deliver or not. Because in another 5 years, Kenya will be 63 years. And from 1963, at 63, we should not be talking about the same story. Things have to change. So how will I manage or structure my cabinet is going to be on merit.
Okay. Again, in Kenya politics, women ni kama mnakuanga mmepewa inaitwaje role people don't trust you. Watu wa trust women with big seat kama governors. Ukiangalia in the last elections tumekuwa na governors watatu wenye wanakuwa elected. So hapa kwa presidency, do you think they will trust you?
I think it's not even a question of trust. It's a question of how safe do women feel to vie for these elective positions. Because if you look at it, we have a lot of women that are very successful in the private sector. Why? Because at that time, no one is going to threaten them. Their security is not going to be threatened. Their children are not going to be threatened. So at that point, women shy away. And even right now, we've been encouraging women to, to run, and successful women to run. We're telling them, come back, to come to this space of, public governance. But the issue of how safe are you going to be always makes women to want to stay in a safe place. Because when you're talking about a woman, you're talking about their children. And when a woman thinks about their children, what do? When they calculate what they have already seen in the political space, they pull back. But are women capable of running governments? Yes. Look at Angela Merkel. She ran to be president in one of the most successful countries, and she's a woman. And she had a 50-year strategy that has continued to keep the nation at a place of advantage and as a voice in Europe. Can women be trusted? Yes. But can we create a safe space where if you're running as a woman, no one is going to attack you? No one is going to harm your children. If we can do that as a nation, then what we're going to see more people and more women coming to vie. Because one of the challenges that we have is that women are more than 50% of this nation. And if we continue having 50% that is not contributing to the political process, then we will never know what their leadership will have been like. And I want us to know that God has given us equal opportunities as men and as women. But as long as our women are not contributing, then we miss out on what women would have given to our country. And I am asking any woman who's listening to me, who is thinking that they could run, please go ahead and do what you can do. And it doesn't even have to be in politics. If you feel that you can be in a place of leadership, I am calling you out and I'm telling you it is time for us to contribute towards the development of our nation. 58 years later, let us step up. Thank you.
Okay, Richard Injete anasema thank you Mutembei for giving Wairimu Faith, the presidential candidate, the platform to present the agenda and allow our potential voters to ask questions. Yes, guys, mnaweza uliza maswali, I know. Kizito hapa anasema Faith, do you have 50 billion shillings? Unajua campaigns za Kenya, they are very expensive. Unaona mtu anachukua like 10 choppers. Whenever unaenda kwa any event unafuata na 10 choppers each and every time, and it's almost on daily basis. So it's very expensive. Sasa unauliza uko na hizi pesa za kufanya campaign ama utafanya campaign aje?
Kizito Patrick, thank you for your question. No, I don't have 50 billion shillings, but yes, I have the resources that I need. And I want us to think about the Kibaki campaign. It was one of the cheapest campaigns that we have had of a presidential election. And I remember Honorable Charity Ngilu was also talking about it yesterday, saying that Kibaki never went to campaign and asked people and gave people money. Now we need to think about, where does this money go to? The money goes to wooing voters. You're giving voters money. And every time a politician gives voters money, once they come in, the first thing that they do is to look back for their money and replace it. The reason why Kibaki was able to achieve what he achieved is that he never gave any Kenyan money anywhere. And when he came in to the presidency, his focus was on the Kenyan agenda.
Oh, okay. So Mamboy anasema we who reside in abroad, mbona huwa we pay more taxes and bado sisi ni wa Kenya?
Okay.
Sijaelewa where they pay taxes.
Clarify. Please clarify your question.
Huyu anasema I am happy. I like the way you have articulated issues. Kindly start campaigns. Cheers, Faith. How will you deal with the debt that we are currently in? And by the way, our debt is almost at 11 trillion, 10 trillion. How will you handle that?
We are close to 11.3 trillion. So one of the things that we need to do really is to have a culture where we think about our country and to realize that we received a country that was functional to some extent, and we must leave this country better than we found it. We have been increasing our borrowing ceiling. Once we hit it, we increase it. We hit it again, we increase it. And so our country is so in debt right now. How will I deal with debt? Number one is that there is something that we call loan forgiveness. Sometimes all people want to see is a different leadership. And once they see a different leadership, loan forgiveness comes in, because the people who have given you money, it's an investment and they're hoping to get back their money so that they can give it to somebody else. But if they realize that you are a high risk borrower, they will not keep giving you money. They will expect you to pay it back. Now, the other thing is we pay back the debt by increasing businesses, growing our economy, making sure that all Kenyans who are at a place, are at an age where they can work, they are working. If you look at it, very few Kenyans are working, and the majority of the Kenyans who can be working are still looking for something to do. What about giving all Kenyans an opportunity to work? Just make sure that opportunities are easily available. As these Kenyans work, we get more taxes. We can pay our debt without necessarily having to increase the cost of living. And we don't have to tax Kenyans more than we are taxing them. Let's just increase that base and make sure that we have a big base at the bottom that is paying taxes. We are able to get out of debt. Then, how do we get out of debt? Number three, we don't need to borrow loans that we don't need, because most of the loans zenye tumeomba, ukirudi usome gazeti unakuta tulikuwa tunafanya hii project na hii project iko na scandal ya like 50% ya ile pesa yenye tuliomba imepotea kwa mifuko ya watu. Just close that tap on corruption and we should be fine.
Okay, so again in Kenya kuna political parties. Wewe uko under which political party? Do you have anyone vying for the MCA, MP seat, senator, governor? And if not, how will you operate as a president without MCAs, governors? Wakikusuppose utakuimpeach tu asubuhi?
Now, I'm vying as an independent candidate. If you look at what has just happened in the primaries, in the nominations that we have had, most of the people who are vying and people who watu ambao tunaita vigogo, they were kicked out. What does that tell you? It tells you that Kenyans have woken up to the reality of their lives and they are voting leaders. They're not voting politicians. Now, as a leader, whether I have governors or MPs, as long as I am doing what I'm supposed to do and abiding by the Constitution, and everybody does that, and that everybody has this nation at heart, we will redeem this country. We've just come out from a pandemic. Close to 1 million people have lost their jobs. Right now, we have over 826,000 Kenyans that have just completed high school. That adds to the number of people who are potentially looking for jobs. And a time comes to a nation where people have to sit down and ask themselves, am I building this nation? Am I building the future of this nation, or am I interested in politics? That is a question that every Kenyan must ask themselves.
Okay. Favor anasema very intelligent. We need your pedigree in leadership.
Thank you, Favor.
Then Petit anasema wow, go for it. We support you.
Thank you, Lucy.
Kizito anasema Faith, Kenya is a very hard country to rule. Don't compare it with the diaspora, but I like your courage.
Thank you, Patrick. We have to ask ourselves this question. What kind of country do we want our children to live in? We also have to ask the second question, and I was asked this question by a very old man. And he said that by the time they fought the colonial masters, they did not have sophisticated artillery, but they reached a place and they realized that if they do not resist the British, Kenyans, regardless of our tribe, we would be slaves to the British rule. And they decided that they are going to resist. So every tribe had their own resistance that arose to fight for you, to fight for me. And if that generation did not fight, today you and I, we will not be having this lively conversation. We will be working for, they were called the settlers. We will be working for the settlers. Tungekuwa tukichimba barabara, tukipikia wazungu, hata sai tungekuwa tufanya hiyo kazi. Lakini kuna watu walisimama wakasema wakati umefika. Na wakati ambao umefika ni sisi kupigana na wakoloni ili vizazi vyetu wasikue under the colonial leadership. And Patrick, I agree with you. Kenyan politics has been politicized, and there are people that have become settlers. They have settled in politics and they don't want to leave. There are families that have been in politics for 80 years. None of us, I don't think there's anyone here who is 80 years, but there are families that have been in politics for 80 years, others 70 years. Some politicians who have been in politics for the last 40-something years, and they're still here. And the question is, in our generation, can we hold hands and say that our future generation is not going to be enslaved by bad politics, high cost of living, high debts within as a country, and lack of opportunities? How long are we willing to watch our girls die in Saudi Arabia? Kwa sababu wanaenda pale, by the time somebody goes to look for a job in a nation that they know that if they come back, it's by chance, it's by the grace of God. The question is for you and I, what can we do? What decisions must we make to make sure that the opportunities here at home, and we do not continue sending our beautiful girls to work in Saudi Arabia and receive them in caskets?
Okay, so unauliza mbona hujafikiria kusimama BMP because president inataka kubwa sana.
Thank you very much. I once worked as a research assistant in Continental House, and I was a research assistant for Maragua constituency. And the reason why I had to work for Maragua constituency is that as a University of Nairobi student, I did not have school fees. So I needed to work part-time and use the money that I worked part-time to pay for my university. And I got to see how politics work. And I can tell you something, that unless we change it from the top and have a totally different leadership, we will continue to sing the same song. And I'm sure you've seen people who have gotten opportunities to work with our government and they resigned. Why? Because they realized that this system is set in a certain way that you cannot fight corruption as an MP. And they make sure you're dispensable. And so you have to start from the top and fix it from the top. Now, let me make an allusion here. We are told very well by the good book, you cannot put new wine in old wineskins. For us to bring change to this nation, we cannot be part of an old system and hope to bring change. We, you and I, have to be the new wine in a new wineskin that is going to bring change all around. Thank you, Joseph, for your question.
Anauliza tena hapa, Faith, can you explain how you will solve the issue of hunger in some places? Imekuwa ni kama permanent thing, every now and then, Turkana, Marsabit, Wajir, wanapatikana na hunger almost each and every year. How will you solve that issue?
Joseph, I like your question very much, and thank you, because this is a very important thing. Allow me to address food security in two ways. There are people in Nairobi who do not have food. Why? Because the cost of food is not affordable. In my other life, I am a pastor, and I've been a pastor in Nairobi for a while. And every so often, every other day, immediately I go to social media, we go to church, somebody reaches us out and says, I do not have food, please give me food. And we have to give people food. So there are people in the city who do not have food. But we have a bigger population that lacks food. Now, how do we solve this issue of hunger? Number one, when I was talking about agriculture, is it possible that we support our farmers to ensure that our farmers do what they are supposed to do? They farm and they have the required information that they need in terms of support, in terms of the inputs that they need, that those inputs are available. Number three, make sure that the cost of inputs is affordable. Now, if the farmers have everything that they need and they focus on growing food crop, then we have food. The second thing is that we also need to diversify the things that we eat. I know we are Kenyans, and once you start touching ugali, you touch us. We are not very happy. But is it possible that we can diversify to grow foods that are drought resistant so that we increase our capacity for food? Number three, our storage is terrible. We have always seen that we lose a lot of crop because of perishability. So if you have potatoes, you harvest them within a very short time, they're perishable and you lose the crop. Can we have government storages where they can store this crop and that we can preserve food? The other thing about food security is also to reduce the taxations on food. If you look at the taxes on food as they cross from one county to the other county, it increases the cost of food and it makes the food not accessible. Now, having said that, we also need to think about people who have farms that they are not using. And now this takes us to election violence. We have a lot of land that a majority of us are not using because post-election, they never went back to their lands. And I'm going to give you an example with my auntie. My auntie was a victim of post-election violence and she never went back to her land. What does that mean? That her land was never farmed from 2007 to the time she died last year in 2021. And we only went back to her land to farm it, to bury her in 2021. So that land has been there bare, and yet she was a huge farmer producing a lot of food. So is it possible that we encourage farmers who left their lands to go back to their land and to continue farming and producing food? And the fifth thing that I want to say, is it possible that we steer away from election violence so that even during election years, we continue farming? Election is only one day, but it causes so many people not to do the economic activities that they're supposed to be doing. Thank you.
Okay, and Jagi anasema very brilliant mind. That's the leader of our nation.
Thank you, Jagi.
Mburu anasema what a way of answering question. Very smart leader.
Thank you, Joseph.
Mambu anasema people who don't have dual passport pay more taxes and yet we are Kenyans. Why? Huyu by the Mambu anaishi Germany.
Okay. People who don't have dual passport. Now, again, to ask this question, are you paying more taxes in your country of residence? Because when I lived in the US, I only paid taxes in the US. I did not pay taxes in Kenya. So are you in a situation where you find yourself paying taxes in Germany and paying taxes in Kenya? And then number two, during my presidential launch, I talked about creating the 48th county that is going to deal with diaspora issues. So there could be something that you're going through that the diaspora, the 48th county is going to deal with. And then in my administration, I'm going to have a diaspora desk to deal with some of the diaspora issues. Because we cannot continue to only see our diaspora as being important when we need remittances. And when we are doing campaigns, diasporians are Kenyans, and we need to also have them as a priority in our country. Then, sorry, go ahead with the other question that has popped up.
Oh, this one.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, kuna hii what's the source of inspiration for running for presidency? Are you married? Do you have a family?
Thank you very much for your question. So the reason why I am running for president and my inspiration, I gave back a brief history about growing in Nakuru County and my life being interrupted because of elections and election violence. And in 2008, thinking about the need for a person who would not cause people's emotions to flare up and people to fight during elections, and having somebody who, if Kenyans are going to fight about two people, you will have a third person and say, this is the person. Creating a leadership that Kenyans want, okay? Yes, I am a family woman. I have a family. Thank you very much.
Okay, do you have volunteers to help you in your campaigns?
Yes, I have volunteers. Thank you very much. We actually have a survey that we are doing right now for everyone who is volunteering. And we always have virtual meetings to meet with our volunteers who are helping us in the campaigns. And if you would like to volunteer, I am reachable on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at Wairimu Faith. So just reach out to me. We will make sure that we send you the survey, and then you tell us when you're available, and we can invite you to a meeting, to a volunteers meeting. Thank you.
Okay, Kizito anasema, Faith, do you really stay in Kenya, and do you know how parliamentarians and senators behave? As an independent, you need backup. How will you manage to rule and articulate those points?
Thank you very much, Patrick. And again, I do not want to belabor the point, but the question is, as Kenyans, because Kenyans are the ones who are going to be voting in the parliamentarians, the governors, the senators, and all those people, are we reaching a place as Kenyans when we are saying that if 58 years later, we are still at the same place dealing with literacy issues, access to healthcare, if we are still dealing with the same things, how are we as Kenyans going to use our votes to bring in people? There are some people maybe in, an MCA in your place who is not known, but you know that this person can be a good leader. Are we going to choose leaders and steer away from politicians? Because 58 years later, we haven't moved forward. And if we are able to vote in the right leaders, it doesn't matter who is president, we can always work together, because at the end of the day, this is our nation. No one is going to come outside and work and make it work for us. No one has our best interests at heart other than us. So our voting patterns and how we choose leaders this year is going to be very critical. But having said that, the executive, as enshrined in the Constitution, can still work. But how do I want us to work? I want us to work together. I want us to be a united Kenyan community, because where there is unity, we are able to achieve so much more.
Okay, Njiro Maora anasema, I'm sorry, you have very good points. Can't your ideas work in Azimio? Kindly forward and come to Azimio.
Thank you very much, Mr. Njiru, for your comment. And again, as I said, you cannot put new wine in old wineskins. And I appreciate the work that has been done by both Azimio and the people in Azimio, and the work that has been done by Kenya Kwanza and the leadership in Kenya Kwanza. But 58 years, having promised us over and over again in various elections and having sold us hope, we haven't moved forward. And the time has come for us to move forward. Thank you.
Okay, Daniel Makala anakuambia, this country is full of mafia, cartels. How will you survive? Ama utaanza kulia kama Bahati jana?
It's a good question. It's a country that is full of mafias. If your forefathers and my forefathers reached a place, and these are not people who had gone to formal schools, but they made a decision that they were going to create a better nation for us. I believe that even for us, facing the mafias, facing the cartels, and facing the challenges that are there, we must straighten up and square up our shoulders and fight the challenges ahead. Immediately we begin to think about mafias, we begin to think about cartels, and we move back. No one is going to fight for this country. I can assure you, there is no one who has a best interest for this nation as people who live in this country and people who are Kenyans. And we must stand up. The opportunity has come for us to stand up and fight for our nation. So we are not going to fight. We're not going to run away from cartels and the mafias. We're going to stand and we're going to fight, because every generation is faced by its own challenges. And if a generation misses their challenge, guess what? They hand over liability to their children. We are not a generation of cowards. We are not going to hand over liability to our children.
Okay, and David anasema, brilliant. You seem to understand challenges of Kenyan, what Kenyans are going through.
Thank you, David. And yes, I'm a Kenyan, and I've gone through challenges. I've lived in this country. When I talk about healthcare as one of the other priority issues that I'm going to be dealing with, my elder brother had a heart disease, and he lived with it for 25 years because we couldn't afford the money that he needed for an open heart surgery. And what that heart disease cost us as a family is that it took all the money that we had. I want you to think about it. In the year 1989, we were paying bills close to 100,000 in 1989. That's a lot of money then. And by the time I was in university, our family did not have any money. And so I either had to work at the university or drop out of university. So I have gone through challenges. I have seen them. And we haven't really gotten to a place where we insure Kenyans from disease. Today, it only takes cancer and everybody in a family goes broke. We need to think about those things, streamline them, and have a way where we can take care of those people. Now, think about it. When somebody has cancer in a family, what happens is that one person has to be sacrificed to take care of this person. We don't even care whether this person knows healthcare or doesn't, but we are looking for somebody who can take care of this patient. Is it possible that we can streamline our healthcare, employ the nurses, because we have a lot of people who do not have jobs, employ people in the healthcare sector, and make sure that when we have people that need palliative care, they can receive proper palliative care. Most of the people who have cancer don't even die of cancer, they die of opportunistic infections. Why? Because even though we try our best to take care of our loved ones, we are not medical practitioners. So I'm a Kenyan, I've gone through Kenyan issues, but there comes a time where we have to stand up and say, you know what, it's gonna be different, and it is time.
Wow. Joseph Mburu anasema you have Kenyans at heart.
Thank you, Joseph.
Then I'm blessed anasema brilliant like Wanjakoya. Wanjakoya ni yule amekuja akasema yeye kulipa loan za Kenya na atakubali wa Kenya wauze banki. So I think watu wanaona uko na point pia kama yeye.
Okay.
Then David Ndolo anauliza, are you just a motivational speaker? Do you really want to be president?
Thank you very much, David. I wish I was a motivational speaker, but I'm not. I'm at a place where I have seen human suffering. I'm at a place where we have seen very high suicide cases. And I was invited to work on a documentary that is being worked on right now concerning suicide cases in Kenya. Today, we have a lot of suicide cases in Kenya. And unfortunately, it is amongst the men. And when you look at all these problems, we've got to rise up. David, I'm counting on you to rise up also, wherever you are, and make sure that we can have a different leadership.
Okay, Daniel Makao anauliza, how will you sort out the fuel crisis? Kama saa hii Wakenya wanalia, unatoka nje, unatafuta fuel the whole day, unarudi kwa nyumba jioni. Haujaenda job, haujaenda anywhere, just kutafuta fuel.
It comes to the system, because when we look at the fuel crisis, we are being told that fuel that's supposed to be used for that is meant for local use is being exported. We just need to look at our policies and make sure that our policies work for our people. You cannot go to your neighbor's house to put out the fire when your house is on fire. So we cannot continue to export what belongs to Kenya. And secondly, if fuel is supposed to be on transit, let it be on transit instead of staying in our country and we do not have the capacity to hold our local fuel. So those are things that we need to think about. But when I'm thinking about the fuel crisis, I'm also thinking about, is it possible that we break or reduce our dependency on fuel? Can we embrace electronic motor vehicles and reduce our dependency on fuel? And when I think about electronic motor vehicles, I'm thinking about our Uber, our Bolt, our taxi drivers. Once we bring in the electric motor vehicles, they will take more money home because they're not spending exorbitant amounts of money on fuel. So these are some of the things that I've not talked about, but these are some of the things that the strategy team and I have worked on and that we are going to roll out. At the end of the day, we are thinking about Kenyans and how can we make Kenyans viable and how can we make Kenyans financially independent. Unless you are financially independent and unless we have food security, we cannot say that we are independent.
Okay, Megan Waringa anauliza, kindly ask Faith our views on marriage to combat certain vices in Kenyan society, such as single parent mothers being left to raise children on their own.
Thank you very much, Megan. And when it comes to marriage, it is a very complex thing that we need to think about. If we are going to look at maybe 30, 40 years ago, we really didn't have the concept of single parents because society always came in to help people to raise families. But because of the amount of stress that everyone is in, everyone seems to be at their corner dealing with their own stress and dealing with their own issues. And so one of the things that we need to ask ourselves is, can we also work on our social fabric as a nation so that we do not have people that are alone and struggling in life alone? Number two, my views on marriage is that marriage has to work, it has to be honorable, it has to be respectful, and there must not be domestic violence. We've just seen what has happened in Nigeria, where this wonderful gospel musician was beaten to death. We've also seen what has happened during COVID. We had so many cases, and I believe you remember them, in our marriages, and so many people were killed in their marriages. Every day you'd go to news and people were being killed. So I will say that my view on marriage is that it must be mutually. There must be respect. There must be honor in that marriage, and there must be a place where we take ownership and responsibility of our children. No one should really disown their children and leave them either with the husband or with the wife and walk away and go to to do other things in life. We brought these children to the world, to this world. We cannot punish our children just because we do not agree. So that's not something of the things that that we need to think about. But I also want to appreciate the fact that our judicial system has been working, and it has been, bringing people and waking people up to the reality that our children have rights too, and we cannot leave our children to eat in the garbage pit. If at all the parents can provide for them, the judiciary is going to hold you accountable to it. But now, even thinking about that, we need to think about, is the judicial process available? Because that service can be there, but then again, you might not have the opportunity to hire a lawyer who is going to represent you. And these are things that we need to think about. When we're thinking about our social policy and our social issues, we need to address those things there. Thank you.
Okay, Olona, is really in mambo ya shamba ile umesema you went to bury your sijui grandmother ama nani. So anauliza nani amekuwa na hiyo land, hiyo your aunt, na Ruto amekuwa kusema the land has already been returned to the victims.
No, the land is just there. It's just bare. If you go there today, all you'll find is just bare land. And I think we need to have a conversation in this country where we can encourage people to go back to their lands and, and farm their lands and, just continue doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Michael anasema to fight corruption in Kenya means harsh sentences to those found guilty, sentences starting from 100 years in bars, death sentences, etc.
Michael, I couldn't agree with you more about dealing with corruption harshly. Because by the time somebody takes money that belongs to the public, they know very clearly in their mind that they have been entrusted with a public office and that the funds that they have are funds that are supposed to benefit the Kenyans. Unfortunately, we have people who are bent on mischief and they take money. And I want you to think about this, Michael. Our president is on record telling us that this nation loses 2 billion shillings, 2 billion shillings every day. So right now, it's 4 minutes to 9 in Nairobi. So there is somebody today, and there are agencies today that have lost 2 billion. And I want us to put these things in perspective. Michael, if I give you 1 billion shillings today, what I would require you to do for you to exhaust the 1 billion shillings is for you to spend 100,000 shillings every day, Monday to Sunday, for 27 years for you to use up that money. 2 billion in one day, it means that for 54 years, there is nothing that you're doing, Mr. Michael. All you're doing is spending 100,000 shillings a day. I want you to think about how much money that is. And if we were able to bring that money into the system, either in education, we can pay teachers well, we can reduce our class sizes. If it is in our hospitals, we can put medication there and have a follow-up system for our patients, have a preventive healthcare system. We can pay our nurses and our doctors. We can put that money in our security. We can pay our doctors and we can pay our security officers. We can pay the military very well. Think about now 2 billion in a day. In a month, that is 60 billion. In 1 year, that's 240 billion. We already have a budget deficit of 862 billion shillings. That means that we have capacity to create that money in our country, but it is going to individuals' pockets. Do we need a harsh sentence? Yes. And this is where, again, we allow the judiciary to be free. We need, again, the legislature. And this is where I'm coming back to Kenyans and saying we need to think about the people that we are going to vote in the upcoming general election. Because if we have a sober legislature, then they can come up with laws that are going to hold our leaders and our public leaders accountable. The legislature, our members of parliament, can go to parliament and say, if you steal public funds, we are going to come up with 100 years. This is what is going to happen. Again, but the question is, for us as Kenyans, who do we vote into our legislature? And is that how they're thinking? And Michael, I hope that somebody who goes to the next parliament listens to what you are saying, and that we have people who are going to critically think about what corruption is doing to us and punish the people who are corrupt.
Okay, Lucy anauliza, my grandmother fought with Mau Mau, imprisoned too. How will you stop imprisonment, oppression of good leaders for the future? Like what happened to Matiba?
Thank you, Lucy, for your question. And my grandparents also lost all their property. My grandfather and my grandmother used to have a lorry, and that they used to do the transport work. And they were told that their lorry used to take food for the Mau Mau people. And so their lorry was burnt down. And that is what they used to, earn their daily bread. And now I want us to think about a country that has a culture of punishing good people. I was on Elevate TV the other day, and they asked me, why is it that the whistleblower for Goldenberg died as a pauper? We need to rethink our values, and we need to ask ourselves, even on this broadcast, we need to ask ourselves, by the way, what does it mean to be a Kenyan, and what values do we uphold? Why do we imprison whistleblowers, and why do we punish people that are trying to make Kenya a better place? It goes back to our leadership. And in my leadership, I say that if you're hardworking and you believe in merit, this is going to be your administration, because I believe in merit, and I believe in competence, and I believe that we can all work together. Now, the other thing that we also need to think about is how we oppress people that we should be working with. We need to see ourselves as Kenyans. I need to stop looking at somebody and say, I think that person, because they're from this tribe, they don't wish me well. I need to see that person as a Kenyan, because if I needed a blood donation, I'm not going to ask you which tribe you're from. I'm going to say, hey, I need a blood donation. As long as you're my blood group, bring it, let me live.
Kizito anasema anataka kuwa your running mate.
Thank you, Kizito. Which county are you from?
Huyu anatoka Kisumu County. He is also in Germany.
Awesome. We need to talk. We are still, hoping for a good running mate.
Simon Waithaka naye anasema, I'm ready to volunteer to campaign for you. Our daughter from Nakuru.
Thank you so much, Simon. Please reach out to me on my social media platforms. I'll be glad to work with you.
Rachel anasema, yes, diaspora's 48th county will be a game changer. Diaspora really needs representation. That's a good point.
Thank you, Rachel.
Surely we want new faces with brilliant minds to change, redeem country from the hands. Personally, I support you, Pato.
Thank you, Patrick. And I want to comment on what he has said about people believing that this country belongs to them. And thank you, Patrick, because you raise a very important point, that we've reached a place where we believe that this country belongs to a few of us and not to all of us. Number two, when we were collecting signatures, because I am required to collect 48,000 signatures from 24 most populous counties, I got that sentiment on the ground. And people were saying, why do I need to vote, whereas hii Kenya imesha gawanwa, hii Kenya ni ya wakina fulani? And I think we need to remove that mindset, because what happens is that people feel helpless. And when people feel helpless, all they're waiting for is for Jesus to come back and they go to heaven. But guess what? We are supposed to be here for a long time. And we need to make sure that every Kenyan feels that truly we are supposed to be here and we are genuinely here and that we are part of this nation. Thank you.
Kikwete anakuuliza Ms Faith, what is your take on same-sex marriage?
Thank you very much, Mr. Kikwetu. Right now, I have serious issues to deal with, and I don't think this issue of LGBTQI is on my priority. No one has to be killed because of the decisions they make, because I just saw there's a girl who was just killed the other day. No one should be killed. No one deserves to die. But I believe that I have serious issues to think about. And I wanted to think about 2 weeks ago, we've just been shown about the number of children and adults that are dying in Turkana because of food. So if we can first deal with the issues that are leading to death, then we can deal on other issues.
Okay, Eric, kindly ask Faith on how she intends to implement the Ndungu land report. Hii report ijai implemented.
Haijaikuwa implemented. And Eric, it is time for us to implement it. It is time for us to think about the land question. It is time for us to deal with things that we have always swept under the carpet, because the Ndungu land report is definitely so many years past its implementation time. It is time for us to look at it and address the issues in the Ndungu report. But then again, as I said, we need to make sure that our judiciary is in a place where they can, without fear or favor, do what they're supposed to do. But if, as the executive, you continue telling the judiciary what to do, then you will never have justice.
Kikwete, again, Faith, the world is going digital. Kenya is dragging its feet and acceptance of digital cryptocurrency. In your administration, what will you do to stimulate the new paradigm?
Thank you very much. This is a very important question, and it goes back to our economy. Are we going to embrace innovation in our economy and grow? Again, think about this. There's a lot of opportunities out there that COVID has presented us with. Why? Because it has pushed us to a digital world and a digital market. Are we embracing all the opportunities that the virtual world has brought? The answer is no. But yes, we are going to embrace it. But then again, think about, how do we work with CBK? How do we work with the National Treasury? How do we change our monetary policy? Because most of the things in government are based on policy. How do we change our policy to embrace innovation, to embrace a digital currency? And I'm sure there is something that our governor is currently working on in regards to this.
Okay. Favor anasema revive Kenya films, regional, national theaters, and other psychosocial amenities to mitigate the social stress.
I like this very much. And then this takes us back to art and artists. It is very rare that you will find our artists happy, because we haven't invested in our artists. And whether they are musicians or they are artists who paint, or they are people who are, again, in our theaters in drama, we haven't invested in that. And so in as much as we are big on talking about talent, we don't put money within talent, and we need to put money there. If you look at most of our national theaters, they're totally run down. Coming from Nakuru, we had the Players Theatre, Nakuru Players Theatre there. And it was an amazing place where you could go on a Sunday afternoon and watch a play. And it was important in helping people to relieve stress. I agree with you. The first thing is to go back, renovate those places, and invest in our artists, and make sure that we also create our Kenya Wood. When we look at Nollywood, it has grown and it has given Nigerians the opportunity. When we look at Ghana, they're also growing vibrantly. When we look at India, they've also grown through Nollywood. And I think it's time for us to also invest in our artists and give them an opportunity to grow. And as they are growing, they give us an opportunity to distress.
Okay, Lucy anauliza Faith, how will you deal with the succession inheritance of children who live abroad?
Succession inheritance. Let me ask Lucy whether I understand her question clearly. Are you asking the question in regards to inheritance for somebody who lives abroad? Their parent is in the country and they have died and they do not get their inheritance. Is that what your question is asking?
Sijaelewa hata mimi. Acha ulize vizuri, then we can answer it.
Please ask that question again.
Of corruption and stop government workers doing business with government. Kenya will be great.
Absolutely. Favor, I like the way you think and your brilliance. It is because that is not allowed. It is, sorry, it is only in Kenya where we have somebody who creates pens or manufactures pens that sells the same pens to the government. Or it is only in Kenya where somebody who is a tailor and tailors wonderful curtains sells the same curtains to the government. I have a problem with that thought. Number one, we do not have integrity in that space, because even if somebody has better curtains, when they come to tender for that, to submit their application papers, documents for that tender, they cannot get it because it's already something that I would, loosely called insider trading. So we put other people at a disadvantage because this person is an insider and they're selling to government. Number two, when it comes to payment, definitely the person who is working for government will be the first person to be paid. Whether there were people on the queue or not, that is the person who is going to be paid. So there are so many things that can be avoided by making sure that if you're a government employee, please do not trade with the government. And if you want to trade with the government, leave the government and trade as an individual who is already outside of government. It is very important that we get to that place. But unfortunately today, those things are happening. They're permissible.
Okay. Richard Okemo anasema, can please Naomi tell us a bit of a story? We can support her, but it's important. History, Richard, tukimaliza hii interview, just kuja hapo mwanzo kumekuwa na historia yake yote, utailan. The history she has talked about the history, so something itafuatilia. Faith, naona we are past still 1 hour.
Okay.
Na maswali zinakuja mingi. Sijui kama uko na time tuendelee na kidogo.
Tunaweza endelea kidogo, tunaweza jibu zile maswali ambazo tumeulizwa.
Okay. Faith, have you imagined reforming our current education system that is old? Also, what will you do to carry out police reform?
Thank you very much for that question. And when I was talking about education, one of the things that I talked about is the importance of education and the fact that we cannot ignore it. Now, our current education system, and I again want to take us back a bit, we already have the CBC program, but the CBC program came pre-COVID. And I was talking about our education system that makes people to be globally competitive, but it doesn't allow us as a nation to be globally competitive. So we need to totally restructure it. Keep the good, and also ask ourselves, are the students who are leaving from our schools going to be globally competitive in the next 10 years? By the time they leave school, will they be globally competitive? Will they have learned skills that they're going to require for them to be financially independent and for them to be at a place where they can, start their businesses? Number three, are we going to look at our education system and also ask ourselves, are we giving our teachers an opportunity to benchmark with countries that we admire? What is it that Germany, there's somebody who is here from Germany, what is it that Germany has done in their education system that we admire? Can we send teachers, and this is why we need to kill corruption, can we send teachers from the 47 counties and pick teachers from every county, whether they're in Turkana or whether they are in Baringo or they are in Keio Valley, pick teachers, send them to go and benchmark, then let the teachers come back and tell us what we need to do. Now, there was another part of that question.
Oh, ilikuwa ya Kikwetu bando.
Yes, ilikuwa ya Kikwetu. It was about the education system.
Yes.
Okay. Now, the other part of that question was that our education system is old. What I would like to say is that I agree with you that our education system is not meeting even the market needs of our country. And I want you to think about this. We are having problems with our college and university students getting internship. And if you're in this country and you have a nephew and niece somewhere, they will call you and say, please, auntie, please, uncle, help me to get internship. Companies are still looking for people to intern, but you find that there is a huge discrepancy between what is being offered to our students and what the market needs. So we need to very quickly kill that. And then, yes, it's time for police reforms, really. And when we talk about police reforms, it must not be punitive, because when you address something from a wrong perspective, sometimes you don't get the right results. But the question is, as we talk about police reforms, are we also thinking about equipping our policemen with the necessary tools that they need? Think about it. As we talk about a virtual world and a digital world, have we equipped our police to deal with new age crime? Have we equipped them to be able to deal with for instance, cybersecurity? Do we have a place within the police department that can deal with cybersecurity? Those are things that we need to think about. As we're thinking about police reforms, we're also asking ourselves, have we equipped them to deal with the issues that we have and also emerging issues in terms of our security?
Okay, kuna swali nimeona hapa, I am a big proponent of decentralization. OAU has been a toothless dog for a long time. IRAD and the rest don't seem, ni IRAD ama ni IGAD? I think ni IGAD, don't seem to contribute to our development. Would you propose Kenya to pull out?
There's strength in unity. I will say that there is strength in unity. And it is important that we are in the OAU, currently the AU. And the other thing that we need to ask ourselves is that with or without the AU, with or without IGAD, what is it that we have done to make our country competitive, right? What have we done to make our farmers competitive, so that with or without these bodies, AU or IGAD, as a country, is our produce competitive? Are we trading with each other? There's always strength when we sell our produce to the neighboring countries. Once we make sure that we are competitive, if AU is not working for us as a nation, if IGAD is not working for us as a nation, we are still making sure that our farmers and our produce is gaining a place in the international market. And secondly, that by the time these organizations need our expertise, that we can go in as experts to help the AU and to help IGAD based on what we have learned. Because if you have a sister that is struggling in your home, you won't say, oh, you're struggling, I'm going to leave you behind. You're going to try and find out, how can I help my sister who might be having a challenge in their life, but I have learned something and I can help them. We might be the hope of the AU, and we might be the hope of IGAD.
Okay, Andrew anasema Faith, shine lights on SIM registration exercise which your opponent in the second command said we have to wait, and why?
SIM card registration?
Yes, hii tulikuwa tumepewa deadline.
Oh, the SIM card registration, I am sure, is ongoing, and I have seen telcos, the telecommunications companies, creating online and virtual platforms for you to register. So please, if you haven't, you can, if you have a Safaricom line, you can go to their website and register your SIM card from there, or you can go to their retail store and register it from there. Now, the other part of that question was about waiting. I don't think anyone is waiting. People are still registering their SIM cards.
Yeah. So we anakwambia thanks for on about the electric mobility in Kenya. As a country, we are ready to embrace this innovation, as we do not have necessary infrastructure like charging stations, as it's where. How will you ensure it takes off?
Thank you very much. This is something that we can easily build. Kenya has a lot of resources, and we can pilot it and build the first charging stations in a place like Makueni, and try it there and see how it works. And then secondly, the question is, are we only going to import technology, or are we also going to be part of the people that are creating technology? Elon Musk has been very kind in giving people his innovations and telling people how he went about it. Is it possible that we can also become innovators of technology? It is possible. Do we have money to build it? Yes. If 2 billion shillings can be lost every day, that 2 billion shillings can be put in good use. It is very possible. And yes, we can be able to do this.
Under your watch, would you do this sijaelewa this tendency of rushing to court in everything before we disagree to listen to each other. I think anamaanisha everywhere where there is anything that government wants to start, lazima mtu akimbie kotini. Ni kama court zimekuwa ndio everything siku hizi.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Thank you very much, Mr. Andrew. Again, it goes back to the people we are going to vote in. Do we have Kenya? Do we really have this country at heart? Because sometimes it's even a good thing that we want to do, but somebody runs to court. Then when we look at our 2010 constitution, it also opens up that space for people to take government to court. And sometimes good intentions get lost in that judicial process. But I think it's very important, and you're talking about that important piece in our society. Will we listen to each other? Because if we would listen to each other, we would avoid long processes and we would avoid delays. Now, think about it. I gave somebody one of the articles I was writing about this nation, and I wrote it in 2008, and I said, I wanted to read this piece. It's written in 2008. He read it. After he read it, he sat down and he was very sad. He said, do you know what? In 2008, I was in class 1. And right now, I'm at university. And what I've read through that I was in class 1 is the same issues that I'm dealing with. And sometimes somebody has a good intention to change some things, but we don't listen to each other. And that's why it goes back to my question. What does it mean to be a Kenyan? And what are our values? And can we listen to each other? If we listen to each other more, we will be able to sort out most of the issues that we have.
Inheritance imeelezewa hapo.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes. Go ahead.
How will you deal with succession of people abroad who parent relatives have died and left wishes will for them to inherit, but relatives on ground in Kenya takes it away from them because they are abroad?
Thank you very much for clarifying that question, Lucy. We have a lot of succession issues, inheritance issues. And unfortunately, it's not just for people who are abroad. Can you imagine that even here in Kenya, we have succession issues where a parent dies and the brother takes the property of the brother. Now, we already have gained, we've already made so much gains in the 2010 constitution in terms of succession. And when we go to court, we are able to, resolve these things in the court. But the challenge has been, if the person who has taken land from you is a wealthy person, then what happens is that they're able to get a very sophisticated lawyer who can take the case in a certain way and people are losing their property or their cases get delayed. So what do we need to do? This again goes back to the legislature. Which MPs are we going to choose? Are we going to work with the legislature to make sure that succession issues are handled properly? And number two, that they don't take time. It's a lot of time wasted when you see people having to leave their country of residence to come to Kenya to attend court. And sometimes you're told you have to be here in person. Thank God that in the recent past, you can attend court virtually, but still it is a waste of time. And it is time for us to address these succession issues. And when we think about them here at home, they also become very violent. And you have seen it on news when people kill each other over land because somebody feels that I've taken you to court, I've tried everything that I can, and I can't, and you find families killing each other. So this is something that we must address, because at the end of the day, we are not saying that we wish people to die, but people are going to die, and when they die, we must not have people taking what doesn't belong to them.
Okay, lastly, church and politics. Kenyans have been brainwashed, and the current breed of politicians are using the church to propagate their hidden agenda. In your administration, how will you separate the two?
Thank you very much. And it's a sad day in our country that we can be at this place and have this discussion and also begin to ask ourselves that how can we stop the politicians from using the church to do some things that they're not supposed to be doing in the church. And when we talk about leadership, and we are saying that Kenya needs a new type of leadership, it is incumbent upon each and every one of us to ask ourselves, as a leader of the place that I am, how am I going to make different choices? Number two, when it comes to the church and politics, we've seen places where a church service has been turned into a political arena. Is it possible for the church to stand and say, politicians will love you, you are part of us, but you will only come to church, and because we respect you, say hi to the people and tell people, something that is beneficial to Kenyans. The other thing that I'm going to say about this relationship, about the church and the politics, is that it has ended up in a place where some people don't go to church because of how politics has infiltrated in the church. And at the end of the day, I want us to think about this, that man is body, soul, and spirit. We are a tripartite being. At the end of the day, the church is important because it takes care of our soul. But we also need the politics, because the politics of the day take care of our body. And so we need to think about leadership and also hold our leaders accountable. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Maswali zinazidi kukuja, sijui kama tujibu hii ikiwa ya kwanza. My question to the incoming president, how will you come up with a solution to our land within our borders? Kenyans living on boundaries, and Kenyans have been facing a lot of challenges, like in Migingo Island, Indian Ocean, between Kenya and Somalia. We want a permanent solution. How will you come up with a curative measure of this problem?
I was having a meeting with fishermen, and it was very unfortunate that in our country today, our fishermen are arrested when they go to fish because of this question that you're asking. And the thing that we need to figure out very quickly is where our borders lie and how can we make sure that our borders are not porous. I do not believe that a fisherman who is going to look for their daily bread, or they're going to fish so that they can sell and take care of their families, should be arrested and taken to another country. And their families, it's not even the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that is stepping in. Their families, first of all, have to think, where did this person go? And then they begin to go to other countries to try and bring back their loved one. So it is important, and yes, we must have a permanent solution where we come up with a very defined, extremely defined, where we can say that these are our borders. And as our neighbor, we acknowledge you as our neighbor, and we want to have good relationship with our neighbors, and that our foreign policy towards you is friendly. But still, we cannot allow you to come into our space and take our people to your country and imprison them. Number two, we cannot also have you come to our space and fight our nomadic communities and our cattle herders and say that they are cattle rustlers. It is time that we begin to realize that this is a sovereign state and deal with this country as a sovereign state and protect the Kenyans in this space. Now, talking about that, also something else that I will also want to add to that. You saw what happened during COVID, that we had Kenyans that were stranded. And it is very sad that when there is an issue in a certain country, you will find that countries go and pick their own people and take them back home safely. But we always expect Kenyans to take care of themselves. We saw our students stuck in a certain country during COVID, and they were stuck there for so many days. No one really gave that as a priority issue to go and rescue those students. And time has come in my administration to make sure that this is a sovereign state and that we take care of our people and that we invest in Kenyans.
Okay, thank you. I think tutamalizia hapo. I know there are so many questions, but hatuwezi jibu zote because naona maswali ni mingi. I think ukikakaa you can plan to come back. Utakuja upatana na watu jibu maswali.
Okay.
Unaona maswali ni mingi sana, so unaweza request again tukulete hapa another day. Siasa zikianza proper sasa, ukianza kucampaign, since umesema the time is not yet.
But we are still raising awareness in the various counties and making sure that we have our volunteers and just having conversations and asking a lot of questions. I've been having meetings with people just to find out what are the issues, and that's how I got to find out about the fishermen issue on Lake Victoria. So it is also, this is a very important time for us to have a very honest conversation as Kenyans and say, these are our issues. Don't sit there and say, you know what, it's fine. In another 5 years, I'll raise this with the president. No, raise those issues now, because 5 years is a long time for us to waste it. We cannot afford to waste time.
Okay, your contact us, you give us your final remarks.
Thank you very much. Again, Wairimu Faith on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, na pale YouTube niko pale. Tafadhali write to me. And then my parting shot is that I want to appreciate Mutembei TV for giving me these awesome opportunities to interact with my countrymen and women. And also, I appreciate your question that has given us such a vibrant conversation. And I believe that this conversation helps us to begin to ask ourselves, what is an election? What does August 9 mean to us? What is going to be our contribution? What is going to be our legacy as a nation? And are we going to allow a country that has such a great potential to go down the drain as we watch it? So thank you very much. We are Kenyans. We have been represented for a long time by the politicians, and they haven't really represented us. And a time has come for me to arise and say, you know what? I'm part of the Kenyans. I'm part of those Mamambogas. I'm part of that Wajiko that they have talked about. I'm part of the people that they're saying I am fighting for them. The people that you are fighting for have not chosen to fight for themselves. And I'm going to be counting on each and every one of you to share their feedback, to support me, to vote for me, to campaign for me. And I believe that it is time for us to have a new nation 58 years later. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you guys, asanteni sana. Good night kwa wale wako Kenya, good night kwa wale wako places kama sisi, good morning kwa wale wameamuka, and wherever you are, asanteni sana. Tutaleta Faith another day. I'm very sure hiyo time bando mtakuwa hapa kuuliza maswali. Otherwise, thank you everyone. Asanteni sana.
Thank you.